first thing we like to do is we like the staff to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll give you a chance to introduce yourselves and we'll do some questions. It's just a discussion, not a debate. See, there's a camera there. We're live streaming this. Is that correct? Okay, good. So
Actually, microphone here, so speak up and on the cruising camera here.
right. Okay. So we'll start with our introductions down. Go ahead.
I'm Brad McElhenney, co-editor of the Gazette Mail. Thank you for coming and welcome to be here.
I'm Kelly Merritt, being editor of the Daily Mail opinion page. This is usually page 5A.
I'm Wendy Burnett. I'm an editorial writer for the Daily Mail opinion page.
I'm Greg Moore. I'm the city editor at the Gazette Mail.
I'm Rob Byers. I'm a co-editor.
I'm Sarah Owens. I'm a staff photographer. Mr. Johnson's editor.
I'm Dawn Miller. I'm the Gazette opinion page editor.
I'm Eric Gare, State House reporter at the Gazette Mail.
Okay. So then what we'd like you to do is for each of you to introduce yourselves and speak for just a minute, maybe just briefly tell us why you're running, and then we'll get to some questions. So I'll just start here on the end with you, sir.
Michael Moffitt, current delegate for representing Putnam, Lincoln, Logan, and Boone counties, resident of Hurricane. I'm running because we didn't get everything finished last session. I was elected in 2014 for the first time, focused on jobs and accountability and education. Very passionate about education issues, including Common Core, as you guys have reported quite a bit. And I think we have a lot more work to do. We are improving on our tort reform, we're improving on our employer attractiveness, but we have a lot more work to do. So I think I've learned a lot in the first year, was a much better delegate the second year, and know what I need to do for years 3 and 4.
I'm Kathy Hess-Krause. I'm running for 13th District. I'm Putnam County resident, and 13th encompasses Putnam, Mason, and Jackson counties, little bits of each. Basically running, I sat through a lot of legislature sessions, listen to the committee meetings online, always telling people to step up and do what they need to do to get the laws passed that we want passed in West Virginia. And when I found out one of our seats were open this time, I figured it was time for me to step up the rest of the way and go in and run this time.
I'm Michael Ely, I-H-L-E, from Ravenswood, an incumbent delegate. This is also my first term. Like the gentleman and the lady on either side of me, I'm from the 13th District. I will be the mayor of Ravenswood for a few more months. Decided this time, being that I'm legally required to choose one office or the other since they're both up, that I would run for delegate again, because I feel like our cities can't move forward until our state moves forward. We can do things to improve our cities, but we really can't transform where we are until we improve the condition that our state is in. And a large part of that is promoting an environment that is attractive to good jobs. You know, so many candidates will brag about jobs that they've created. So many politicians will brag about jobs they created. I'm not here to create a single job. I'm here to promote an environment where jobs can be brought here by private employers that will lift our state from the bottom of the rankings. Because ultimately, whether it's obesity, drug use, tobacco use, any of those things, they all correlate with the fact that we're one of the poorest states. And if we want to address all those things, we have to address that root cause, which is a lack of prosperity. That's why I'm here.
Hello, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. My name is Joshua Kurt Higginbotham. I'm also running for the House of Delegates in the 13th District. I'm a proud polka dot, raised in Putnam County my whole life. I grew up on a farm down there. I've learned how to work hard from all my family. See, we're all entrepreneurs. We're all business owners. We've all done things for and with the community for decades. And I'm proud to continue that family tradition. We're all job creators. And I'm proud to say that I've helped my family in creating many jobs through our businesses, through our companies, not only in Putnam County, but here in Kanawha County, in Mason County, and we're planning on doing some expansions into Jackson County as well. Some of the things in the community that I do include scholarships for high school students, getting involved in the arts and education. And those are the exact same things that I will try to accomplish when I'm elected to the House of Delegates. Education and jobs. Those are two vital things. And some of the ways that we can accomplish those are through our infrastructure. Our infrastructure is crumbling in this state. We need things like broadband. We need to make sure that people want to live here, that they can get cell phone service, that their property values will continue to go up. That's how we bring people here. That's how we bring jobs here. And that's how we make our schools even better. So thank you.
Who wants to go first?
I will. I'll direct this question to you, Michael Ely. As Whitney can just vouch for it, you just said what I was griping about this morning is that I hear so often, we're going to create jobs. So, I don't want legislators to create jobs. I don't want more state government jobs created. So that means there's needs more tax money to pay for it. But we want more jobs out there in the private industry. What happened? What has occurred in the legislative session that two sessions that you've been in to help improve the environment for job creation in West Virginia, and what more needs to be done?
Well, the big thing is right to work this session. That's huge because that's something that employers look at on the list. I know it's very controversial, but that's been made a big issue. I think we all have heard about that. Many reforms to our legal system. Companies don't want to come to a state with a tumultuous legal environment to where they will be exposed to unfairly high liabilities if something bad happens. We've moved from being an outlier to a middle-of-the-road state. That being said, those changes are long-term changes. Our state's reputation isn't just going to change because we passed some bills in the past 2 years. It's going to take years for those things to really have a meaningful impact. And so that's why you see me, and this is dovetailing into another issue, fighting so hard to keep from adding a burden to our taxpayers through increased taxation, because that removes money from our economy. And while the work we've done is very good, it's a long-term goal that we're going to get to. And if we take more money out of our economy through increased taxation, we're going to undo the accomplishments of the past 2 years. And I will not allow for that. I'm proud of workplace freedom, Small Business Capital Act, regulatory reform. I think one of the best bills, the most underrated bill that we passed this session was the 5-year sunset on regulations. We've had these things pile up for decades without any review. And now, every 5 years, all these regulations will be looked at. If we don't need them, they'll go away. Now, granted, some of those are just rules that aren't always enforced, and they're just old, obsolete things that are on the books. But some of those are gotchas for our small businesses. And if we can do away with some of those, it's going to help a lot. So those are just a few things.
And just leave the question open for the rest of you. Start with you, Joshua. Just what more can the legislature do to create the environment for businesses to create jobs?
Well, I see West Virginia as being a hub for manufacturing and a hub for warehousing and things like that. We are within driving distance of the majority of America's population. We have many urban centers that surround us. Unfortunately, none here in our own state, but close enough to where we can be that center for commerce and trade. So one of the things that we can do to accomplish this is cutting or even eliminating the inventory tax. This is a major issue that the business owners that I speak with, that they bring up to me. And people would say that yes, this would lower our revenue as a state, and that is true, but it would only be temporary. Temporary enough to bring in these businesses, create the jobs, and expand the tax base. We have money saved up in our rainy day fund, and unfortunately we are going to have to use that just to survive as a state. But if we want to bring in those jobs, if we want to bring in those businesses, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. And we are going to have to spend the money that we have saved. It's not called the rainy day fund for any reason. It's for a recession like what we're in now. And we have to do the necessary things in order to fix our state.
Kathy, anything for?
I think we need to make the state friendlier for businesses to come into, get rid of some of the red tape. Looking at starting a business just from an individual's perspective, you have so much red tape to go through. Many just throw up their hands and say, forget it. We need to cut out some of those paperwork, some of that red tape, a little bit more explanation for how to fill things out, where to go with the business aspect of everything. We need to cut back on lawsuit abuse. We need to make sure we don't have everybody getting sued for everything, no matter how big or small. Well, mostly small, I would say the big things need to be taken care of. But you have an abuse out there of lawsuits. We have red tape with DEP, EPA, every government agency stepping in. We need to make the business friendly in this state to bring more businesses in.
Yeah, as far as government, I totally agree. Government has created too many jobs, and we're working to cut that back now with our budget discussions we're going through right now. But as far as making the state more friendly for the employers, the right to work bill is going to help. Tennessee is attracting Chinese manufacturers. South Carolina is attracting manufacturers. South Carolina attracted Boeing operations, making a plane down there rather than Washington because of their right to work. North Carolina, other states that are right to work are seeing their manufacturing base grow. Where we have land available, we had a bill this year to attract a manufacturer, HB 2110, to attract a manufacturer for ammunition. They wanted a tax break, and the government thought it was too much. But working with companies, trying to get more companies here, even if we have to give them breaks, maybe we have to look at, and we have looked at our overall tax burden. We've discussed it through the tax review committee last year. There's more work that needs to be done there. The wind came out of their sails when the budget revenues came in so low last September. I think the tort reform we did last year was a big benefit. And I think with us being one of the most regulated states, some more work on regulation reform. Delegate Ely mentioned the sunset bill. I think that's a great bill. Being on legislative rulemaking review, I've gone through and read all the rules we pass, and it's amazing the amount of minutia we get into. But one other idea I've talked to some businesses about is making a quicken program for EPA. So you can go through and check off, do I need an air permit? Do I need an air permit? Do I need a water permit? Do I need this? And really make the EPA and environmental regulations more really a real computer program as opposed to just filling out paperwork online. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think we can do a lot of these things to make it more friendly for companies coming here.
Okay. Should we talk about the budgets? What's the solution? What would you do if you're in the legislature? Indeed, you are in the legislature. What's the solution to the state budget?
We've had numerous discussions, some conference calls, and I'm in the group that says we don't need any more taxes.
No new taxes at all.
We need to look at our spending. We need to look at, and across-the-board cuts are totally irresponsible. Slashing departments is irresponsible. We need to look at what's working, what's not working. I had a conversation yesterday with a lady on IDD waiver, and she says she saves a lot of money because she does the self-directing process as opposed to using the agency and having the only agency group that comes in is the one that she has to use, and they come in and just do a checkbox. Did you see the doctor? Yes. Did you follow up on your current appointments? Yes. Are you going to follow up on your appointments? Yes. So she sees it as a big waste of time, and more stuff that she can do on her own to qualify, to save money, to improve the IDD waiver program. But yeah, no tax increase. I think those that are addicted to cigarettes, if they haven't quit already, are addicted, or I can't explain it, but they're choosing cigarettes over food. They're choosing cigarettes over their child's food, and adding more burden on them will just hurt the working poor and the non-working poor, which we have many of, that choose smoking. I'm not an advocate for smoking at all. I think smoking is wrong, but I don't think it's the government's role to get involved and say what you're doing is wrong. People say raise the sin taxes, raise alcohol. We already make a ton of money off alcohol because we do the resale. The lottery, we make the lottery and gambling. The state's a 50-50 partner in that. And there's a lot of stuff we learned this year with the horse racing, with the dog track fund and the racetrack modernization fund, that those really should be gone and the dog track decoupled from the gambling. And if the dog track can survive, fine. If not, we're not propping up the horse and buggy industry anymore. So there are things we have to move on from. I understand it's going to cause some pain and hurt some breeders, but if no one's going to watch it, then why should we keep funding? So taking revenue that's taking the taxpayer dollars that's sitting in the agency funds back, do the sweeps we proposed, cut our spending in various areas. Our 2012 education efficiency audit showed a lot of top heaviness at the Board of Ed, and Dr. Martirano says he needs to address that, but I think a lot of it's been shuffled seats on the Titanic. That we need to do some real cuts.
So more real cuts at the Department of Education?
In the administration level, not in the school, in the classroom. We're in top 10 or top 15 on spending per pupil, but we're the lowest paid teachers. So we're not going to take it away from teachers. We've got to fully fund PEIA with the 80-20 match. We're not going to go around the law and break the law and stick it in the revenue, the surplus fund to fund 100%, because that's not the intent of law. And those that are implying that we should fully fund 100% are trying to evade the law.
The kind of effects you're describing, really think they're enough to balance the budget?
From the proposal we received last week, Senator Hall believes there's some flaws with that proposal, but from what we've been told last week, that we can find $290 million, $287 million, and we need 270. But it's still being reviewed. Mike Hall, Senator Hall, we're sending that back to Richie and Dan to work with their various sides last Friday, and they're supposed to be working on that this week.
I'm sorry, who are Richie and Dan?
The Speaker's assistant and President's assistant, Richie Heath and Dan Greer.
I didn't hear you say rainy day fund.
We will probably have to use some of the revenue shortfall reserve fund as well. Yes, it's revenue shortfall, and we have on the last day of the budget hearings, the governor brought out $92 million more of revenue shortfall. So we will have to use some of that as well, but we can't use too much of that because of our bond rating.
I agree with Delegate Moffitt. No new taxes. We need to cut spending. We need to go through, see what agencies are doing what's working, what's not, cutting out what is not working and what's not needed anymore. You've got different ones padding their budgets with money they don't need, but once they get to the end of their calendar year, spending it on whatever they can find to spend it on. If those monies aren't needed throughout the year, they can be taken back. We shouldn't have to raise our taxes anymore with as much money as we have coming into this state. And as much money that's being haphazardly spent, I think we can clear that up.
So what specifically would you cut?
I would have to go through everything and see. I would say every agency probably has something that can be cut out that's no longer working or no longer needed.
What agencies do you think are padding their budgets?
I think Department of Ed probably pads their budget toward the top within the administration side. We have some highly paid administrators compared to other states. I know some of our superintendents make well more than many other states, especially those surrounding us.
Some of our county superintendents.
Yes.
Kathy, since Delegate Moffitt brought it up, can each of you also talk about why you don't support the taxes?
I don't support any new taxes. I think more taxes to the people of West Virginia you're doing. If we do that, we're going to continue to get what we've got right now, which is losing people. And the more people we use, the more taxes the state's going to want to take. And you're just going to continue that cycle. We need to keep our population, keep our kids. I have 3 older children. 2 of them live out of state, probably won't come back, and a 3rd one is getting ready to probably move out of state. And if we can't keep our younger population because of taxes and jobs, then what do we have to do? We've got to fix this.
I hear a lot in this discussion about our budget and which direction we're going to go, that we need to have this balanced solution and this adult solution. And the people who say these things claim that raising taxes is the adult and the balanced solution. It is neither of those things. It is neither of those things because the people of this country pay more in taxes than they do on food, clothing, and shelter combined. It's not balanced to add taxes to that list. It's not balanced at all. Balance is simply saying, just don't raise them anymore. We're not even asking them to be lowered at this point, but just don't raise them. To me, that's balance. To me, that's the adult thing. The adult thing is to tell the people of West Virginia the truth. The adult thing is to not engage in scare tactics like we've seen. These 5 options that have come from the governor. How many hundreds of thousands of state police and teachers will be unemployed. It's always intentionally presented in the most painful light possible. But when you talk behind the scenes, and when the governor talks to his people behind the scenes about these same scenarios, they're not presented in that light. You know, we never hear anything in any of these 5 options that have been presented to us by the governor of what we're going to do with top-level administrators. What are we going to do about people, all these highly paid, over $80,000 a year bureaucrats that, what hit are they going to take? We never hear about that. What we hear about is the cigarette tax. And it's not an adult solution at all. In fact, it is one of the most crass and craven, politically designed instruments that's out there. Picking on a politically weak and unpopular group to single them out to balance our budget. Statistics show that people who smoke are far more likely to be poor. So instead of cutting the pay or cutting down on the amount of highly paid bureaucrats we have in Charleston, we're instead being told by people in both parties that the adult, mature solution is to balance our budget on the backs of hardworking, poor West Virginians. And we are one of the poorest states in the country. That's not the solution at all. The solution is what I just said. It's what Delegate Moffitt just said. And it's a plan that has the final few kinks to be worked out. But to say that it's something that we can't do is simply not true. Now, I'm hesitant to take out large sums of money from our rainy day fund because it will affect our bond rating. And if it lowers our bond rating, then our ability to borrow money and the current money we've already borrowed, those interest rates rise. And what does that mean? That means higher costs to our state. That will exacerbate our budget in future years. And it will also be more expensive for our state and our counties and our cities to obtain financing to develop our infrastructure, which is what we're all talking about. So to me, the adult solution is to restrain government. You know, times are hard. Let's not pick on the poor people of this state. All the progress that we've made in this session, we will undo if we raise taxes on the lowest of the low. And just one more thing I will say is the proposal that I'm hearing now is the 45 cents increase on the tobacco tax. Again, I like Delegate Moffitt, think that cigarette smoking is wrong, but it's your choice. And even those who believe in the tobacco tax admitted at the beginning of session that a 45-cent increase is not going to be a deterrent. It's just simply not enough to be a deterrent. So what this is, it's a cash grab. That's what it is. And if that doesn't convince you, just look at the fact that one of the proposed cuts from one of the other proposals, frankly, on my party side, is elimination of the tobacco cessation program. Now, if we were all about trying to help people get healthier, we'd probably keep that program. But that's proposed to be axed. And what was one of the proposals was to keep e-cigarettes taxed. They may not be now, but again, while that may not be a healthy option, it's healthier than smoking. And if we're really worried about people's health, we wouldn't tax those. We wouldn't make those products more expensive. So to me, all those things prove that it's not really about people's health. It's just about a cash grab, and it's about a cash grab against a group that polling has shown that that's a popular thing to do, is to tax tobacco. Leadership isn't about polls. Leadership is about doing what's right. It's about principles, keeping your word. I pledge not to raise taxes on the people of this state, and I'm going to keep my word, and I would call on my colleagues in both parties to do the same.
So what specifically would you cut?
Oh, I think Delegate Moffitt already said a lot of the things that I mentioned. I think we can, in the proposed plan, many agencies would be cut between 4 and 10%. We could do that without touching Promise. We could do it without hurting PEIA. We could do it without hurting our state troopers, as well as some of our other vital programs. The legislature is a good place to start. In fact, separate from this proposal, I supported a proposal in session to cut the pay of all elected officials at the state government by 25% and use that money to give pay raises to our teachers. Obviously, that didn't go very far, but I think it shows that I'm willing to live my convictions. And I will say this, as mayor of Ravenswood, I haven't taken any health insurance or retirement from PEIA that I'm entitled to for the past 4 years. Why? Because my predecessors were all retired. They didn't need those things, so those things weren't in our budget. So instead of increasing the burden on the people of my community, I decided to live my convictions and take the hit on my pocketbook. And I call on my colleagues in Charleston to do the same. It's time to show some leadership.
To clarify that, Mayor Ely, are you still accepting your salary as mayor while you're simultaneously in the legislature, in effect receiving 2 government paychecks simultaneously?
I am, because I'm performing 2 jobs simultaneously. That's correct. And the people knew when I was running for the House of Delegates that I would remain as mayor, and I got my strongest support from my hometown where I am the mayor. So where people know what I'm doing, I made it very clear. My campaign slogan was, "It takes a mayor." It takes a mayor because we have so many regulations that come down from Charleston. People don't look at how they impact our cities and impact our city budgets. So what I say is, I can hear it, almost hear it in the question, is you don't like all this government spending, but you get 2 government checks. Aren't you a hypocrite? No, I'm not a hypocrite. You can't apply the brakes if you're not in the car.
Well, I've learned in business and in many of the organizations that I have led that we have to keep all options on the table. I don't believe that we should raise taxes. I believe that raising taxes hurts the middle class. I believe it hurts West Virginians. But what I've learned is that if we keep it on the table, then it gives us options. Do I think that raising the cigarette tax at this time is what we need? No. I don't think that that's what we need. I think we can balance our budget effectively without doing that. 5 years from now, we could be having a completely different conversation. And that's what I want to focus on, is the future. I believe that I trust our current legislators, both Mayor Ely and Delegate Moffitt. I trust both of them and Speaker Armstead and everybody in the House and Senate now to effectively pass a budget for our state. However, I do think we should be focusing on bringing those jobs in and expanding our tax base. If we want to fix our finances as a state, we need to be thinking more long term. And the only way we can be doing that is by bringing in more jobs. Right to work was a first step, but we need to do many more things to attract manufacturing, to attract tourism, more emphasis on the manufacturing than the tourism. But we have to do something. Currently, I think that they're going to be good. I think it'll be fine. But it's 5 years from now. That's when I worry. Coal is just going to keep on going downhill. I don't think that we're going to see it come back. I don't think we're going to see a resurgence in coal. And we're going to have to come up with other ways of other sources of revenue. Or we're going to have to make some cuts. And some of the ideas that they've already proposed are good ideas. But I think that over the next few years, we're going to see decrease in costs for many things. The passing or the repeal of prevailing wage, that is going to save our state quite a bit of money, I believe, especially for our roads and other infrastructure, our schools. It's going to save the government a lot of money. And what we need to be doing is we need to be using that money elsewhere, whether that be paying our teachers more or making sure that other agencies are fully funded. I believe that the solution is not this current legislature, not this current budget, but over the next few years.
So any other specific cuts you would highlight in addition to what's already been listed?
None at this time. No, none at this time.
Okay, well, you mentioned, Mr. Higginbotham, you mentioned drawing more businesses in, and you said that several times. So do you have a specific step for the state to take to make that happen? Everybody wants that to happen. So.
Sure. One of the things that was proposed this session, and I was disappointed that it didn't go any farther, was the broadband. I do believe that having internet will allow for a 21st century economy in this state, especially when you allow for more access to it. Our state is decades behind other states in terms of technology, in terms of our diversity, in terms of our education, and we have to modernize in any way that we can. That is the only way you're going to see the millennials stay here. We've all said that we want to diversify our economy, we want to bring in more jobs, we want to make sure that our young people stay here, but no one is really proposing ways to do that. And I think broadband is, as I said, a good first step to that. And then the inventory tax, as I've already mentioned, cutting that as much as we can, cutting taxes in any way that we can on small businesses and entrepreneurs. That will allow for entrepreneurship to grow in this state. I do want more outside investment, but I believe that there are plenty of opportunities for our citizens in this state. My father was a welder for many, many years. He left school at the age of 17, worked for decades, day in and day out for barely minimum wage. And then when he was about 40, he took all his life savings and came home one day and said, "Josh, I bought a train." And he did. And he started his own company. And our whole family has been involved ever since then. We have one of the lowest new businesses, the lowest number of new businesses being created in this state. Very poor ability for entrepreneurship. And we aren't seeing stories like that happen anymore. There are very few businesses being created. So yes, we want to bring in that outside investment. But we also need to make sure that our citizens are able to open that restaurant that they want to, or create that construction company in Mason County that they've been wanting to do for their whole lives. We need to have a balance of both things, outside investment and entrepreneurship for our citizens.
Okay, let's just follow up a moment and we'll let the other candidates chime in. You mentioned getting rid of the inventory tax. So how would you either make up that revenue or cut?
Well, I would like to see it disappear, but I'm willing to accept just a lowering of the tax. As I said, I believe that spending some of our rainy day fund will help with that, but we do need to be focusing on the long term. We're going to have to spend the money that we've saved up. You know, it's going to hurt. It's not going to be very popular. But what other choice do we have other than cutting every single agency? That's the long-term solution. That's what I think we need to be doing. And then over the next few years, when those jobs do come in, when they are created in the state, then we'll see more revenue for our state government.
Any other candidates
Can
have
I just ask a real quick follow-up, Joshua?
Sure.
You mentioned broadband. There was a number of broadband proposals, so I just wondered if there was a specific one.
The one sponsored by Senator Chris Walters.
That was the one that was going to create a state own network
Yes.
and use upwards of $70 to $110 million of
Yes.
state funding.
Yes.
I suspect that Mayor Ely and Delegate Moffitt will have a different opinion
Yes.
of that bill.
Yes.
Thanks.
So I would like to hear the other candidates' opinions on broadband bills. Who would like to
Sure,
go
sure. I
first?
guess we'll just keep maybe going in
Okay.
order,
Yes, sir.
if that's easier, if that's okay with everybody. I'm not the boss. You know, the broadband, look, the state of the internet in this, there's no denying that it's poor. It's pretty good in Charleston. You know, maybe you all haven't experienced difficulties, but maybe you have. I don't know. But if you go very far out, the access is really poor. People just don't have it. But we have to think about whether that's a problem or a symptom. I think it's a symptom of a much deeper problem, and it keeps coming back to it, is we need to make our state competitive, and we need to make our markets competitive and inviting to multiple companies who will come in and compete to provide service to people, because competition lowers prices and improves quality. I know there's a strong temptation to go with a state-sponsored tax or internet system, and it's very appealing because we're so frustrated with the status quo. But I don't think we should simply look to the next fad, so to speak, and simply spend more money, just throw more money at the problem. Because if you look at a lot of the research that's been done in places that have tried this or something similar to it, I know there's some differences in this plan that make it unique, but the concept is the same, and it's a state-funded internet system. And those systems are generally shown to be inefficient, slow, and costly. I understand it's hard to think that anything could be slower than what's now. And maybe it would be a little faster. But then we're dealing with the seen versus the unseen. What we might see in that situation is a little bit faster internet. What is unseen is the $110 million. And I think if we're going to propose $110 million or however much in new spending, then we also need to propose where we're going to come up with that money. For me, the answer is a lot more simple. Again, it's to make things more competitive, to increase competition, so that it's not expensive for companies to provide internet to come into our state and do business, at least not any more expensive than it otherwise would be. Granted, there are inherent challenges in our geography and our terrain. We're the most mountainous state in the country. So by that definition, it will be more costly starting out, which is why it's all the more important to make our government, our taxation, our regulation of those industries as lean as it can be and still be effective in order to allow us to compete. I think that dovetailed to the broader question that was asked about businesses generally. And I would say that the same principles apply. We've done a lot of good things, but we have a long way to go. The tax code is a nightmare. If it were up to simply me, I would not only scrap the inventory tax, but I would scrap the whole thing and institute what's been referred to as the Fair 55 plan. It's online, not on my website, but it's been proposed by a couple of think tanks. It's just one example of what we can do, but it would be a more broad-based solution to where everybody pays similar comparable rates. It can be done in such a way that it's revenue neutral, although I would like to see it be revenue negative on a static analysis, because I think that produces more net revenue in the long term. But I think just a revenue neutral plan would separate the debate from whether taxes should go up or down and simply focus it on changing the structure of our tax system. I realize none of this sounds very exciting at all, but this is what businesses look at. They need a system that's simple, that's easy to understand, and that's easy to implement, so that it's not costly, so that we can compete with other states. And I think, too, we have to change our mindset and our rhetoric. You know, I hear this phrase all the time, out-of-state billionaires, like it's a bad thing. They provide a lot of our jobs, and we don't want to chase them off. But our small businesses too provide, I think, even a larger percent of our jobs. And this goes back to regulations. A lot of people say that companies hate regulations. No, I don't think that at all. I think a lot of times big business loves more regulation because big business has this expanded infrastructure internally that they can afford. They can pay their legal staff, they can pay their lobbyists, they can pay compliance. And so the small business guy that employs 10, 50, maybe 100 people can't afford those things. So it's much more expensive for him to compete. So what happens is that those expensive regulations that are lobbied for by the big corporations and their high-paid lobbyists, they keep the small guy out of business. So if we can dial back on those, we'll improve the environment for our small business owners, and that's just as important, if not more important, than our big business owners. So all those things are approaches that I take and will continue to take if we're elected to improving our business climate.
Thank you. Alrighty, so getting back to the various broadband bills, any thoughts on those?
I think we do need to increase our broadband access here, given I'm in Buffalo and actually have pretty good internet compared to most people, but I pay well for it. But we homeschool, so I need to have it. And I think if we got competition in here and allowed more than one company in an area to provide broadband access or DSL access, it will bring down the cost and bring up the competition and have us better access. You will get more people have the internet then, and more businesses will be able to come in because that's what they're wanting, to be able to run internet businesses, to have that access to the rest of the world, even though they might be out in the middle of Buffalo, West Virginia.
So you like Chris Walter's bill?
I would have to look into it deeper and see where all of it's coming from, but I think we need to have more broadband in West Virginia with better access and higher speeds, because the speeds, DSL keep trying to get me, but they're very slow, and you can't do much on that. So we need to get faster speeds here and more competition.
Thank you.
I looked at Chris Walter's bill. I thought this was a good bill. I talked to Chris about it, but then after looking into it further, I saw some serious reservations. I spoke to not only the Frontier people, but CNET people and others. It said we have ample supply of middle miles in the states. It's the final mile. It's the most costly connection to the household. And if that is the case, and I take them at their word, I'm not sure that a state-owned network is really the best thing to do. We see how our state infrastructure is handling right now. I don't think we need to add any more to it. That being said, I think we do need to do something to get connections out to rural Lincoln County, rural Boone County, even rural Putnam County. There's places in Putnam County that don't even have city water and city sewer, let alone internet. So it's not just a poor county versus rich county problem, it's a whole state problem. And I think by the House tabling the bill and doing a study this summer, that we will be able to understand it more. I know Delegate Hanshaw had the group come in and talk about broadband, and I applaud the AG for his work with Frontier and this settlement, because for them to advertise rates and speeds that aren't even close to being met is just wrong. But Ms. Krause brought up a great point. The protectionism that's afforded to companies in the state is wrong as well. Parts of Hamlin are cut out that they can't get suddenly because the existing phone company has the internet service there. So we need to allow competition, as well as maybe SB 16, the tax credit bill, would have been a better option than the SB 315, the middle mile bill, because that really did provide connections to the home. But I saw problems with that too. People said that companies would be double dipping, getting federal tax breaks and state tax breaks. So I think we did the right move by tabling it for the summer and doing a study on it. We proved last summer that we do do a lot of good work with our studies over the summer, and with the 2-day sessions, we're there from 9 in the morning till sometimes 9 at night. Not just coming in, collecting a check, but actually doing some real work. So I think with the new leadership, we're doing that. You guys are quiet today. What's wrong? Big lunch?
Okay, go ahead. You got something?
What,
Go ahead, Bert. Hang on.
Oh, Bernie?
Delegate Moffitt, one of the bills the governor signed recently was the voter ID bill.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that on your Facebook page. You said you argued for it on the floor, and you said you thought it was needed, and you were glad the governor signed it. Opponents of that bill have said it's not needed, it's a solution to the surgical problem. Why do you think it was needed?
I spoke to it, and Delegate Byrd and a few others called me out saying that it wasn't really fraud, it was just misrepresentation. But in Hamlin alone, there's 2 women with the same name except for a different middle name. One's Joanne Barrett, one's Joanne something Barrett. And Joanne Barrett always votes, the other one doesn't. And she was very distraught when she found out she didn't have a perfect voting record because the other lady got credited for her votes twice. And it wasn't any ill will, but if one day they both decide to go vote and one came in second, they'd say, well, you've already voted, you can't do it again. So instances like that, my signature is not the same signature I've had since I registered to vote when I was 17. Granted, I've moved states, but many people have not. So, and we're not hiring handwriting experts. We're hiring people to come in and work the polls. So it's very easy to have fraudulent issues.
Are you aware of any instance?
No, but no one was aware of voter absentee ballot issues until the sheriff in Lincoln County and the county commissioner there made that real public. So just because it isn't known about doesn't mean it's not happening. And we show ID to get a bank account. The Patriot Act requires IDs for bank accounts, for a social security check, for all sorts of things. Why not show ID for voting as well? It's one of our most important things. We need to show ID for a Second Amendment. Why not show it for voting?
Anybody else? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a couple. I do believe that we should be showing ID before we vote, and I agree with Delegate Moffitt for the same reasons. However, a lot of people don't have access to an ID, and some of the opponents of the idea say, it hurts minorities, it harms the ability for poor West Virginians to vote. And what I would like to say is, it doesn't cost that much to get an ID. But that's number one. And number two is I do think that we should also expand on what ID you can actually use when you go vote. It doesn't necessarily have to be a driver's license. I don't think it necessarily has to be a state ID. It could be a veteran's card.
And we should note that the law that was passed is extremely expansive in terms
Yes.
of the types of ID that you
Yes,
can use.
yes. Really any way to verify who you are. That's what we need to be doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific type of ID. Any way you can identify.
I mean, I would concur on that and just add a little bit to it. As you correctly pointed out, the law is very broad. You can use almost anything, to the point where some might argue that what does that actually even do? Honestly, some might argue that, but I do think it's a needed step simply because it moves the needle in the right direction. I think someone who's a senior, maybe 65 or 70, they can even bring someone who, as long as they've known that person for 6 months, can attest to that's who they are. I think one instance where voter ID really helps is, for example, someone who may have a disability, like, say, Parkinson's disease, who maybe didn't have that disease when they signed their voter registration, and their signature would not only be different, but unrecognizable. And we should make it an easier experience for the people like that to vote, and that's one, I think, the hidden benefits of this.
Now, in a case like that, though, I would imagine that if someone challenged that, it would be a challenge ballot, and then it could be proven that that's the same person, and their vote would still count.
It could be. I'm sure. Challenge ballots, if it's found that it's legitimate, that they can ultimately be counted well after the election. But as you know, when challenge ballots take place, some people feel that that's discouraging them from voting, or that it's frustrating, you know, they don't want to put out the poll workers, there's a line, and they may just not, in all cases, they may not always vote, even though they would have the right to.
Are you aware of any case of voter fraud that this law that's passed would have?
I certainly don't commit any voter fraud, so I don't know of any instances where it's happened.
I thought as a mayor of a West Virginia town, you might be have heard.
We don't operate our city elections. We turn those over to the county, and I'm not anywhere of any instances in the county where any fraud has occurred. But I will say, just drawing from my experience, I worked as a poll worker, and I know how easy it is when you've got a line of people. You know, you've got a signature. You know, I'm not a handwriting expert, and we're not trained on that. So it's a much more objective thing to look at somebody's face as opposed to, you know. People, when they sign documents, they'll just scribble sometimes. Cursive writing isn't taught as much in our schools, and that's a whole other topic. So I think this helps avoid some of those issues.
It also legitimizes the process a little more. Those who are disenfranchised saying, I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't count, that know that, hey, we don't have the voter fraud problem. We actually have to show ID. I show it at the bank. I show it everywhere else. Why shouldn't I show it? I think it just gives me more reassurance that the votes are being counted properly.
And with the broad aspect that they put in there of what can be used as ID, or even another person, I don't see where this is a problem, and I do think it's needed. We've seen it with the last big election across the country, people saying about the fraud that was taking place, or more people voted than was or more people were registered. I'm sorry, more people voted in a county than what was even registered. So there is problems there, and I don't think with where we have to show ID for everything we do in our daily life that this should be a problem.
And you know, I'm sure we all are aware of what occurred at Marmette. You know, with the elections that occurred down there. You know, I don't know the details of what happened with that one, the ballot stuffing, or they stuffed the ballot box. But I do believe that this voter ID law would have helped prevent that. Maybe not change the outcome, but I do believe it would have helped.
Any of you like to see the religious freedom bill come back again next year? Who would like to go first?
I can.
Okay.
I think the bill was very misunderstood. I think Chairman Shai explained it very well as far as the 3 times it was used in the state. Once for a couple that wanted to get married, a Unitarian couple that wanted to get married, and the state said they had to go for the syphilis test, and in the case in 82, and then the original one was back when the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't want to serve on jury duty. So I think with the Supreme Court saying that the states have to have, it's federal law. The federal law, Bill Clinton signed it, and it was advocated for by Democrat senators and Democrat House members and passed unanimously on both sides. It was supported in the West Virginia House 92-2 in 2012 with the Democrat majority. I think it's been twisted and turned into something that it's not a license to discriminate. It is not a license to discriminate. But those on the other side want to make it into that. The right to practice your religion is a protected right. And this just clarifies when the state, it clarifies for the court, excuse me. The kids will get off the bus in an hour. It clarifies when, for the court, what the balance is, when there's a state compelling interest and when the individual's religious freedom takes precedent. I think it has become a big distraction because of all the other things that are implied with it, but I don't see a problem with passing the bill and moving on and doing the right thing.
Even in light of what's happened in North Carolina, do you still want to bring the bill back?
I don't see, I mean, it's happened in Indiana, it also happened in Arkansas. Our bill was very much like the Arkansas bill, which flowed through and wasn't even discussed.
But after North Carolina, people pulling out PayPal, why would you want to harm the
PayPal
job?
is so hypocritical. They're operating in 25 countries that persecute gays, that hang them in the streets, and they're still operating in those countries. Yet they're pulling out of North Carolina. Shame on them.
So you wouldn't welcome
No,
yourself?
absolutely not.
You would not
Sorry.
welcome.
No, they're just being very, very critical. They're feeling the pressure and not willing to stand up for what's right. How can Bruce Springsteen discriminate to all those people and refuse to work for all those concert goers, and yet he says a baker who doesn't serve cake is being critical? He's doing the exact same thing. He's refusing to perform to North Carolinians. Isn't that wrong?
He's taking a stand. Isn't that what you're doing?
So why is it okay for him but not for others? Why can he refuse to serve all those people? He's refusing to serve those people.
Because it's discrimination that's never right. It's okay to take a stand against discrimination. It's not okay to take a stand for
He's
it.
discriminating on those who feel that that a man should be allowed to go into a girl's locker room.
That's what
I'm
Bruce
sorry,
said. Bruce said that?
Yeah, he pulled out of the conversation.
We said this was going to be a conversation on
Right,
that.
right, right.
Yes.
So thank you for telling us you would not mind seeing that bill come
That's
back
correct.
up again, and you would vote for it.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And that was actually all I wanted to ask all of you, is what your preference is on that, if that should come up again. Would you like to hear next?
I would like to see it come up again, and I would vote for it.
Okay, thank you.
I would as well. Very briefly, because I know I've been windy. If you look at all the statistics and not just cherry pick the current headlines, I've heard this session that right to work, prevailing wage repeal, and religious freedom make people leave the state and make jobs leave the state. And so our own pro-jobs mindset is kind of being attempted to be turned against us and in supporting these things. But if you look within the past year, net migration, the 18 states that gained in net migration, 12 or 13 of them had no prevailing wage law. We got rid of that. 12 or 13 of them had right to work, and I think 9 of them had the religious, some kind of religious freedom protection. Looking at our bill, it was a short bill, 2 pages. It spelled out a 4-part test. We didn't decide any outcomes, but a 4-part test of how court cases would be decided. To me, this is consistent with my stance on a fair lawsuit climate. It spells out a reasonable basis that would decide any cases which can already be brought forth now under the Second or the First Amendment. They can already be brought forth now. Looking at actually where this has been applied, not only in the 2 states, the 2 examples that he brought up in West Virginia, but in other states, religious freedom restoration law like this has been used to help decide a case involving a Sikh, S-I-K-H, person of that background and faith. Has been used to help decide Native American practices involving use of peyote, beard that a person had for religious reasons would have been okay if it was for a medical reason, but the question was, is it okay if it's for a religious reason? And none of these people were Christians, so this is not just about Christians. It's about all faiths. And if we're going to be inclusive, we need to be inclusive to people of all faiths. This bill actually fits in with the values that these companies are purporting to hold. I just don't think they realize it. I think they've got kind of sucked into this mindset. But I would say, while I too strongly disagree with or take issue with companies like PayPal who want to take it out on North Carolina but do business in countries where they kill gay people in the streets. I think doing business with those countries is a good thing simply because it shows that trade is a way to achieve peace. And by engaging in trade with them, we will, maybe slowly, export our value system to them through interactions of the people who are. It's a slow process. But if we just cut off trading with those people, if we cut off trading with North Carolina or PayPal or these 25 foreign countries, we don't do anything to advance the cause of non-discrimination. We actually hurt it.
So if PayPal said tomorrow we want to come to West Virginia, you'd be
open arms. We need the jobs, and let's do it.
You know, the Religious Freedom Bill was not a perfect bill, but overall I think that it would benefit a lot more people than it would hurt people. As I said at the beginning, you know, I do a lot of scholarships here for West Virginia students, and on our application it specifically says we do not discriminate against homosexuals, transgender, people of any different religious or ethnic belief, anything like that. We don't discriminate. I don't discriminate at all, nor do I believe anyone should. But right after the bill was being introduced, or during that time, I spoke in favor of passing the Religious Freedom Bill. And I, as Delegate Ely brought up, did bring up the idea that we should be protecting religious minorities. And this bill did that. It would have done that. It would have helped Muslims and Jews and Christians and everyone. West Virginia is not a very diverse place. In fact, if you look at us compared to the rest of the country, we're just as diverse as what the country was 70 years ago. 97% of us are white, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And while that's not a problem, we do need to bring in diversity. We do need to have the appearance, at least, that we are open and accepting to everybody. And I do believe that the Religious Freedom Bill would have done exactly that, because it did protect these minorities. It protected people of different faiths. But there is one thing that I do believe we should, as Christians, I'm a Christian, I used to be a youth pastor, I used to be the head of a Christian ministry in Putnam County, in a community center. But as Christians, we have to stop being so hypocritical. We have to stop saying, well, our people are being persecuted, our people are being discriminated against. And while that is true, we have to be aware of the Muslims and the Jews and other minorities who are being persecuted in America. There are 3 times as many hate crimes committed against Jews than there are Muslims. No one's talking about these things. But the religious freedom law, I believe, would have helped protect those minorities.
Anything else down there? Alrighty. Well, thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm starting.
Joshua?